Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall, the post-race show that comes on after the race, or after the court appearances, as it were, this week here. Coming at you on Friday the 12th. Hope you're having a wonderful end to your week and beginning to your weekend here on this special edition of the show. Definitely wanted to weigh in a bit as to the conclusion of the NASCAR lawsuits between NASCAR and 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, which was settled this past week, just yesterday on Thursday, just 1 day short of what would have been the conclusion of NASCAR's testimony on this. And, you know, yeah, I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to tell. It's not entirely hard to tell what the temperature of the water is out there. It seems like most people are pretty happy about this. I'm not sure how to feel about this. Still kind of internalizing it here. I'm a little surprised that after all this highfalutin language here for the last 16 months about, it's a monopoly and NASCAR's a monopoly and they don't let anybody else in and they don't let anybody else do anything. Then it just came down to, just getting permanent charters. It's like, why wasn't that? I mean, was that it the whole time? I forgive me if I sound a little ignorant when it comes to this here, but we're hearing more about this the nature of the settlement. And I'm sure there was more that was going on behind the scenes here too, that was bargained for. But, if it was just about making the charters permanent, I don't know. It seemed like there would have been an easier way to go about that. But, again, maybe that's a reflection on NASCAR and their negotiating tactics and what led up into this, or whatever else has happened here. But the team seem really happy with that, at least at the outset here. I myself have been very outspoken in my displeasure for the charter system. I know I am not a team owner, and I don't have perhaps the best grasp of what it takes to operate a team in today's NASCAR, but I do have eyes, and I can see what it's done in Formula One. Where their Concord agreement was just re-upped this week as well, wasn't it? We had news about that. And, I couldn't help but think back to that Andrea Moda documentary that was wonderfully produced, but talking about a team that, was kind of pointed at and said, oh, well, look, because we don't have teams like that anymore, Formula One's better than ever because we only have this number of teams and so forth. But as we've seen with the effect of, all the rather dramatic efforts that the Andretti Global effort has had to take to try to get into Formula One to begin with, even with a name like Andretti in racing, it's very, very hard to break into that sport. And I fear for the future of this sport that we have created very much the same thing here. I see why, and I know that it's probably not the most popular view of this. I see why what Jim France was saying in his testimony that he can't see into the future. I mean, you just make them permanent forever. It's like, is NASCAR itself going to be permanent forever? It's hard to kind of put that forward there. Was that really, the most important thing that had to be accomplished here? And again, does it make it easier to market for sponsors knowing that, a charter can't be rescinded by NASCAR unilaterally or anything like that? I mean, that could be argued there, but I'm not having this end of the Return of the Jedi kind of feeling here that everybody seems to be having, where they're like, yeah, high five, we did it, and it's great. And I'm like, I'm not sure what's going to look like on the other side of this. Quite frankly, I mean, was anything accomplished that's going to fix leadership or the officiating or the nature or this car and how expensive and non-performative it is at the short tracks and so forth? Was anything accomplished there? Ideally, from what we're seeing, and again, just preliminary reports here about the teams being able to weigh in more on NASCAR decision-making here, it sounds like there's more of an active role in there. Maybe that's something that could accomplish those things. But it's just interesting that we're not hearing that initially. Now, maybe that'll come out. Maybe we'll find this out further along here. But, it's, I don't know. I don't know. There's so many, there are so many things that are still not entirely resolved here that, and again, I don't think, and again, I wanted to wait at least another day here to do the show here before some more developments came out, and we're still kind of hearing what's happening with this here, but just to try to figure out where the wind blows from here, because one way or the other, as we talked about on the last show here, we had the statements that were made by Steve O'Donnell and Steve Phelps that were very disparaging, especially as to Richard Childress. We've heard Johnny Morris's response to that as well, and that separate case that's now developing since then. And the NASCAR testimony, and kudos also to the journalists that were covering this trial firsthand. There were several people that were out there. They did a wonderful job on that. And the J-Ski archives here as well, keeping track of the news that came out. They really rose to the occasion there, because when you don't have video cameras in there, when you can't just hear the testimony yourself, it's very challenging. And, having done stuff in courtrooms as well before, I've been second chair in a lawsuit there before. It's a challenging and sometimes intimidating environment, even if you're sitting in the crowd there. So I think they did a fine job of that. But going back to where we go from here, I really don't see what in here is going to create a change in leadership or a culture change in the sport, which I think in both cases are probably very much warranted here. You certainly can't have people that are in charge of this sport viewing certain personalities that have been involved in the sport for many years in that light. There's also, I was kind of disappointed that at one point here, it sounded like they were going to try to bring somebody from Fox into this, and that was blocked by the judge there at the same time. I was really kind of hoping that maybe the TV aspect of it and who's guiding what and how much of this is, a NASCAR issue and how much of it is a TV issue, seemed like that really didn't come up as much in the case here too. And I guess perhaps that is a whole other discussion for another day. Because we're just talking about the teams and their role, their seat at the table, and what it is for them going forward. I don't know. I would have been much more interested if this went the rest of the way, because I think, at least from what we heard from the people that were covering the case there, of course, the plaintiffs, you have the teams come up first. Very interesting testimony from both Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. The presentation of just like the culture of the sport and kind of where it is. But when it got down to, okay, it's going to be a 2-week case, and the plaintiffs rest early on Tuesday, and there's basically about 3.5 days for NASCAR to put forward 16 witnesses that the witness list they have to boil down and try to fit it into there. And there was some testimony from Jim France that even Jeff Gluck was saying did not go very well. And, there was also some statements about maybe jury fatigue as well, especially once we got to the money right to the end of this, like right before this case settled, like the last day of it, the penultimate day of this, they're getting into the numbers and they have the accountants up there and they're crunching these numbers, and it sounded like people's eyes were just glazing over. And it's very interesting that right after that, the settlement suddenly kind of, freed up there and it moved along. And maybe they just figured the wind was blowing at that point towards, people just kind of being like, okay, what are we even talking about? Like just the judge at several points was bringing up that it sounded like there wasn't, they were seeing too many trees and not the forest. We're focusing on so many little things there. And it did seem like the plaintiff's, the case that they were putting forward was taking an awful long time to actually lay it all out. And I sensed a lot of frustration. You're always going to have frustrations from, the judge. I've always compared judges to mall Santas because, what it is, this case, even if it's a case that goes for 2 weeks like this, it's just the next thing on their docket for them. They got a whole line of people that are going to be coming up next, and it's going to be either just a meeting on a motion or something else, or another trial. Maybe it's a trial just takes a half day, or maybe it's a settlement conference or anything else. It's just next person up, next, because they got to just keep moving it through. And that's why, you're going to get some impatience from the judges up there. I'm sure that when this settled, it was right on to the next deal there. So that's, that's where that comes in. But man, I don't know. I think, now I've always been of a mind that whoever you are, whether you're a individual or you're a, businessman or you're anything like that, that it's best to stay out of the system as best as possible, because the system can make mistakes. And perhaps this was something that was going through NASCAR's mind as well. That you can have a verdict that is found. And of course there could be an appeal after the verdict and whatever else that happens from there. But, is that really going to be the best solution for both parties? Is that going to be something that's going to work out? Is that going to be something that's going to be that's going to be debated about, continually from there? It very well could be, it could go well or it could not. And, and that's kind of the problem, because what you're doing is you are literally making your case. You're presenting this to people that are supposed to be independent, just jury or peers and, the impartial judge and so forth. And they don't have any knowledge about this, this business model. They're just hearing it for the first time. They're trying to learn it. And, they're not going to have the same understanding that maybe you or I would, just talking about, charters and the way the race teams operate and what the sports history is and how its leadership is operated. They're not going to understand it the same way. So are they going to come to the right conclusion? And that's the risk. And that's why I kind of gave this title here about a game of chicken. It definitely felt like, certainly looking back on it here, with it now resolved after the settlement here, it was just a matter of who was going to blink first. And they were just going to, and yeah, some part of, the trial procedure, can involve that as well. It can be a matter of just, just having just a discussion between both sides. A lot of times mediation's pushed. Certainly it was in this case. And ultimately that was what, resolved it in here too. But, it's frustrating because it sounds to me like this whole thing was just, a way to renegotiate the contracts. They couldn't negotiate the contract, or at least the team said they couldn't, with NASCAR, and they just kind of basically just faced a brick wall. And so they had to just, not sign it. At least a couple teams did, and then started this whole case. It just feels like whenever there's a settlement, ideally, there's something that, is going to work out for everybody. But in this case here, it just feels so reductive to me. It feels like what I'm still getting my mind around is, are permanent charters really going to accomplish everything the teams really want? And what are the unintended effects of it? It's going to be damn impossible for new teams to get in the sport. Josh Bilicki was saying this right after the verdict. And there were others that were commenting about this, and I share that concern. I think that this case, and if it was entirely about the charter system and making the charters permanent, if it was all about that, then, NASCAR really open Pandora's box there back in 2016 when they did this whole thing with the RTA and started this system to begin with. They had to know at that point, that it's like, okay, you have this asset and if you leave the sport, you can sell this asset. So you're not just stuck with, whatever, fraction of a dollar or whatever you're going to get from selling the property and the race cars and so forth. But you had to know that it's like, okay, well, it's like, oh, I have this. It's like a franchise, right? It's like, well, not really. We can probably rescind it if you're not performing well enough. We can do it, it's only for this certain term, and that's going to be renegotiated and this and that. And there was all this hemming and hawing about it, and they just went forward with it. And then once they did that, you had to know at some point that there was going to be this feel of, especially for the big teams, and I'll just straight up say it, these big teams got this windfall with these charters. Teams like Hendrick and Gibbs and Penske that are not going anywhere. They're not going to be shutting down. They don't need this extra asset or something like that. They're the names of the sport. They're the most successful teams in the sport. and they get this charter, and again, other teams have closed. We saw the interview with Tommy Baldwin Jr. this week, talk about how many teams that received charters still closed, which by itself, again, how much of that was was that a feature, or was that a flaw? Was that just like a defect, or was that a feature? Was it trying to, preen out these other teams that don't need to be there? And when you have something like that, and especially for the big teams out there that aren't going to go anywhere, it's very quick for something that's a windfall to become an entitlement. And then you feel like, okay, well, yeah, we should just have this forever and ever. And it's going to be just like the NFL. And it's like, you're always going to have these teams out there. Not to say teams don't move and all that, but these teams are still going to exist and so forth, and try to apply that model. Yet another step in shoehorning all this stick and ball stuff into NASCAR racing. Now, I'm no economist, I'm no businessman, but it's in NASCAR, you've had teams open and close, and you had teams that were opening and closing before charters, and you have teams that are opening and closing after charters. And do I think this is going to change after, just because they're permanent? No, I don't. I think that, even if you have some other teams out there that, okay, yeah, they have it locked in forever. Yeah, they'll sell it, but to who? The charters are going to be overvalued so much more, because now it's going to be a finite amount of them. And it's for this much longer term. I mean, how much is that going to be worth to somebody? We still don't know what the marketing of this is going to be. There's still so much fog around all this. And again, the fact that, again, we're still just getting drips and dregs here. I'm looking at the J-Ski page here about all this. I just don't know what this is going to look like on the other end of it. I don't know. I feel like the teams kind of, it's a short-term gain. I think that, teams certainly, they want to look for something that's going to make it easier to market to sponsors, and, or whatever, or maybe even moves past the sponsorship model. Maybe that's what they're looking at or something. I'm kind of wondering where that all fits. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to be in the team, if you're going to be in every race all year, no matter what, just as long as you satisfy these performance standards, I mean, where, and again, how much money are they getting from NASCAR? How much more are they getting? Is sponsorship necessary? And, or what role does sponsorship take in it? The teams are always going to want to, get more money, of course, because they're going to want to be in a situation where, that buys more resources, that buys more research, although it's still a spec car. That goes back to the leadership again. And like, is there going to be any more development of the car? Are the teams able to kind of do that? That's where I think it's kind of tricky here. I think that if there was a verdict that NASCAR had a monopoly and that it needed to be broken up somehow, and that the teams needed to have a greater role in certain aspects, again, there's always that risk that the verdict doesn't go their way. But I feel like that probably would have been better for the teams in this case. I feel like it still feels short-sighted to me that the long time, these evergreen charters was the end goal of this. That feels like the short money. Even though, undoubtedly, NASCAR has taken a massive PR hit with this. Not to say they didn't deserve it for, the statements that were not brought into evidence. And then also just, some of the testimony there where they were talking about, the safest car we've ever had and all this. And knowing that you got 2311 out there where Kurt Busch is now just a member of the staff, and thank God he's still with us and able to contribute to that team. But that it just killed him when he had to retire from driving, that he couldn't compete out there, all for what was a relatively minor accident. There's so much that was happening in that 2022 season when they brought this car in, and, the media partners, I think, had a hand in this too, of just being very cavalier about, the car caught fire. Oh, that just happens. Sometimes rubber just gets stuck in the rocker panel and it catches fire. It's like, it shouldn't do that. It's like, the wheel just carves itself in half if it's not locked on all the way. And, that just kind of happens. Like, wait a minute. It was all presented like it was just so obvious. And then, you get later and later in the year and suddenly things can't be explained, like how Tyler Reddick, is getting a concussion from just normal bumper to bumper contact at Martinsville. How is all that going to be fixed here? I hope it will. I hope it will. I think it's certainly better than a verdict that went NASCAR's direction, if that was, in the possibilities, here. I do think it's better in that sense here, but, I don't know. The charter system, I still think, is a flawed system. I think it stunts the growth of the field. I think it makes for a very drab, Cup Series garage compared to Xfinity and trucks. And that's where kind of, I'm hearing some of these other comments about all this too, where it's like, oh, well, you could just have a car in the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, and you're not held by those restrictions. No. Yeah, but you can't get in the Daytona 500. You can't get in the Brickyard 400. You have open teams out there too, but how much longer is that going to be? That's what I want to hear in this too. Where's that going to end up in this? And where's their voice in all of this? Because you know what? I mean, those guys really put, everything on the chopping block leading into this. Remember those statements earlier in this year, and I guess they didn't get certified into evidence, but we've seen them now, where you had team owners like BJ McLeod and others that were talking about how much a charter would help their organization, or had helped it in the case of BJ's and his team's career. And they put it out there in them, standing on that side of it, and in talking about in the case before it started here. Where do they end up in here? There's a wonderful expression my dad said the other day, that when the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. And that was very much a case right here. You had two sides here. You have multi-million-dollar teams, that are competing in the highest, level of stock car racing against the sanctioning body itself, with its influence and its history and everything there. You had these two that are going along, and at the end of the day, what they settled on was making permanent a entitlement, making permanent these charters, and at the cost of anybody else that wants to get into the sport. Theoretically, they could buy a charter, they could enter an open car, but where do they end up in this? I said this on the show last time, that I really do sense that, and it's almost because maybe they just didn't want to talk about it or something, but it seems like every phase of this has been at the cost of small teams and developing teams. And that just kind of just gets pushed to the background, that it's all about, we need to make sure, these teams that are chartered, that exist now, that, that they're able to have a seat at the table and they can do it. But, what about other people that want to compete in it? You heard about that quote that Mike Joy said, back at Bristol in 2004, talking about the Starting Park teams back then. And that's the other boogeyman that's always been a problem. Oh, we can't have the Starting Park teams. Isn't that terrible? It's like, why is that so much of a threat? It's always felt that way. And I don't view this as any different from that, honestly. Unless something else turns. Again, maybe this stream might age very badly. It's very possible. But I have not heard, what the path forward is on that, because I think that if we're talking about a sport that's much better, if we're not just talking about, oh yeah, everybody that's got theirs has theirs and that's fine, and forget everybody else, well, that's not good enough, because that's not what stock car racing's about. It's not like Formula One. It's not like these other sports. And you got other sports like endurance racing and sports car racing where they don't have charters. And in fact, we're just advertising that just this week. It just feels so reductive, to me. And I don't know what it's going to look like here, but I know that the trajectory of the sport has always kind of been against small teams being out there in the Cup Series, and in spite of that, again, look at the determination of guys like BJ McLeod, like Rick Ware, like Carl Long, who have, like Jonathan Cohen, like others that have been able to maintain this program despite constantly getting pushed to the side, constantly having to run with, underpowered cars and having to dig deep just to build a car, never mind a couple of cars in their garage. you're always going to have, I think there's a large part of the fan base that probably doesn't care about that because they just want to see, who's going to win the race, and it's going to be the big teams and what's going to be happening there. That's true now as it was 25 years ago, as it was 50 years ago, when it was Petty and Pearson, and then, whoever else is just showing up in the field and all that. Most people aren't going to care, and that's fine. It's either you do or you don't. But I think that I've always viewed the small teams as a canary in the coal mine, that it's been the indicator of good times and bad in this sport. And in these last years, before we had the charter system, you had times where you had start and park teams when fields were lean, and then you didn't have any because suddenly more sponsors and more interest came into the sport, and you had this fluctuations, you had these abilities in there. And I know it's difficult for these race teams in that situation to know that there's no guarantees of anything, but these are competitors. These are competitors just like anybody else out there, and they're going to all, they're competing businesses, they're competing team owners, they're certainly competing drivers, and they're just going to do the very best they can out there to do the best they can. And I think the fewer limitations you put on that, the fewer entitlements you put in there, you don't have a top 35 rule, you don't have a charter system, you have the dual races. Yeah, think about that. Why the hell are we even going to have the dual races at Daytona? Like, I know it's already been a problem when we've had short fields. We've had about 38 or 40 cars, and it comes down to just watching the last transfer spot and have two guys there. And, if that, what's even going to be the point of even having them? We're almost to the point where, thankfully we still have qualifying, I guess, at least, but, that format still needs to be, untangled there. That's kind of, those are still lingering concerns. And I see that this would help the teams that have charters for sure. But again, the biggest teams that have not sold their charters that are still in business today are still the biggest teams now. Your Penske's, your Gibbs, your Hendrick, and 20 years from now, is that really going to change? Well, probably not now. They're just going to be in there. And, again, people can celebrate that or whatever, but I think that when the sport is unpredictable, when it's predictable, it's not as interesting. And one element of that unpredictability is, you don't know which team is really going to take off and be a big organization or how long it lasts. Petty Enterprises, and then, you got Childress and what happened with them, and then getting Earnhardt on there to, build that program up, and then the rise of Hendrick Motorsports. A lot of these teams that are in there now, they went through those slings and arrows, and they deserve respect, certainly. And they deserve, their, to have a say in the direction of the sport. Absolutely. But they're not, it doesn't last forever. It just doesn't. Again, we don't know how long the sport's going to last. So I don't see why this was the end all be all of all this. It feels like the short money to me. It really does. Now, again, maybe we're going to find out more about this. I'm just kind of looking at it here. Bob Pockris tweeted this yesterday afternoon, talking about the framework of the charters. 2/3 of the teams need to okay renewal of charters. If they don't sign a renewal, the team is still chartered, and they get a year or possibly more to sell their charter. Then if they don't meet certain performance standards, must sell but get time to sell. And then NASCAR gets 10% of each sale, up from 2% from before. See, again, performance standards. That's, again, that's the smaller teams, and it's going to burn that wick at the very end of the chartered programs out there. You got this closed universe of not even 36 chartered teams, because you got, of course, multi-car teams. And what's going to be the direction of that? What does this mean for teams that have 4 charters and trying to reduce them to 3 or whatever else there? It's just been this land grab to try to get, everybody getting whatever they can get. But what does that mean? It means more away from small teams to the point where they're just not there. I'm really surprised, again, I want to know where the small teams place is in all this. And it does matter. It matters to developing driver talent. It matters to, just having that extra bit of color in the garage area when you have new programs and new investors and people wanting to be a part of the sport. That was another reason that the sport was as popular as it was at its peak, was that it wasn't certain. Again, cycling back to that again. Yeah, you'd have teams that would be, on the ascendancy or on, or shrinking back down. But then you'd have new investors that would come in and maybe they breathe new life into it. Like Arnold Motorsports into what was the Melling team, and Melling's team before was Bill Elliott's team. There's always kind of a chain reaction that kind of covers it. And to me, that's always been one of the most interesting aspects of it. I would hate to lose that, because knowing that it's going to be just these teams and they're just going to be there until they just get bored or whatever, I guess, and then sell their charter for, however much. And then, it just gets rebranded as somebody else. But it's, even at that point, is there even a path to start a team from nothing anymore? I don't know. But that's definitely a concern. It's going to be, I'm not thrilled about all this here. I mean, I'm happy for Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. They put on a great case. They won. They won the game of chicken. I certainly don't view this as a win for NASCAR. Absolutely not. And not saying it should have been. No, I think things were looking very bad for NASCAR in this one. Certainly from what happened with the statements that were excluded from evidence and that being publicized going into this. Now, of course, that's separate from the jury, but then when it gets to the jury side of it there, and then Jim Francis' testimony not going well, and then the accounting testimony not going well, and them having to cram all their remaining witnesses into 2.5 days, it was not going well for NASCAR from what it sounded like to me in this case. And yeah, probably they're like, okay, well, what do we need to have to just have this go out? And probably at that point, I think, again, I do think it probably would have been better for the teams if they just saw this through to the end. When Michael Jordan said that they were going to be seeing this through to the end, I believed him on that. I'm like, okay, well, we're getting down to last week and the last couple days. Like, okay, well, it's about to go into the jury's hands here. And then just at the last second, then we're just going to do it just for the charters, just for the full-time charters. Like, I just don't know. I don't have a warm feeling about that, about this, so, again, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where that worked out here. I guess the lingering effect of this is going to be what's the effect of having them be permanent? If they have permanent charters, and these teams are going to, be, in the sport, it's about having a seat at the table. It's about having, more rights and negotiations, but are they going to actually have that? What's going to be bargained for? We're now seeing from these other posts here that, that they're working out this new agreement. They're talking to the other teams, of course, that were not involved in it. That's always the interesting part too. You got Hendrick Motorsports, these other teams, thumping their chest. It's like, oh yeah, isn't it great? What we can do when we work together. It's like, you guys signed the agreement. I mean, like, it's, that had to happen. It's like, okay, this works out. And everybody's like, yeah, I was against it before I was for it, kind of stuff. Like, okay, yeah, neat. But again, I'm not ignorant that it is a business and these are competitors, and yeah, everybody from the top end of the field to the bottom is going to do the very best they can to, get any advantage they can. And that was very much a part of this too. So, it was interesting. It is a significant moment in the sport's history for sure. But I don't look at this, automatically as like, oh yeah, everything's going to be just hunky dory from here. No, I mean, again, it is a civilian's understanding of the legal process. I feel to just feel like everybody was happy here. No, there's a lot of pictures of people like smiling and shaking hands and all that. No, this may not be over either. Let's be real about that. When the money's on the table and all these other things have not been resolved, whether it's the leadership, whether it's the direction of the sport, whether it's the car, whether it's, everything else, this is just the beginning of it here. Or do the teams want to, is there something else the teams didn't work out? Because again, when you have mediation, when you have these negotiations that happen at the end of the day, both sides are going to have to give something up. They're always, and what was given up on their side here? Was it, demanding changes in the sport? Was it demanding a full season championship? Was that even part of it or something? I don't even know. That's what's going to be interesting to find out, because, these mediations, it's not one side surrendering. This isn't like, the end of the Civil War here, where one side just surrenders and, puts their sword on the table here. It's like, no, both sides had to give something up for this. And, we're probably not going to fully understand that until we get more of these details here and so forth. I mean, just seeing some of these initial reports here, again, NASCAR getting more of the sale of charters. Okay. Yeah, there's one part of it there. But we'll see how this goes. And, but yeah, I mean, there's something that teams have picked up that they didn't have before. And there's something that NASCAR has given up here that they didn't have to give up before. But what are they going to do with that? And what's going to be the consequence of that? That's going to be, very, very interesting. So, fingers crossed, I think I hope that this is going to create a new, wonderful future for the sport. I just think that you got to have, good driver development. You got to have new teams. You got to have new faces in the sport, and you have to have as few obstacles to that as possible. I think that's important. I think that is. And I don't think that was a priority in this case. I really don't. And if it was just all about these charters and then that's it, and then we can just dust our hands of it and boom, that's it. I mean, this is the only chance these teams are really going to have, to do this, to really grill NASCAR to this extent. And yeah, they 23-11 in front row. Again, nothing against them. They stood firm on this, and they pushed this through these last 16 months, and they got this where it needed to be. And if this was all about them getting their charters back and getting them, getting their funds back from 2025 and still having all three charters for next season, yeah, if that's all that they wanted to really accomplish, if that's the number one thing, if that was that big, that it's not about, again, what was all this stuff about a monopoly? What was all this stuff about, like, we can't negotiate, we can't do all this? Like, what was all that about? If it was, if it's just that they're stonewalling you and they're not letting you negotiate this, and I don't know, but it's gonna be very interesting, and I'll be very curious to see what the effect is going to be on the flow, if any, between the top three series. That you still have openings for, again, developing drivers from those series about, getting certain rides. Is it going to be a situation where a chartered team can afford to run races unsponsored? That's going to be really interesting. It used to be that, yeah, that was a real problem, and teams still had to run races unsponsored to stay up in, in the plan money and so forth. And we've seen examples of that. You used to have, like, the Daytona 500. You have teams that would make that race and they try to run the full season, but they didn't have enough sponsorship. They run maybe a few races and then they'd scale back. It used to be, and actually that hasn't really changed too much here, because we heard this from Front Row Motorsports during the trial itself, that there were some races they had where they didn't have any sponsors for one or a couple of their cars, and they had to run, of course, Bob Jenkins, not the broadcaster like some articles were showing, but the team owner there, talking about, having to run unsponsored entries, and, how much money was lost there. That'll be really interesting to see what comes up there. But, yeah, I would caution, again, we can be happy about this being resolved, and, these teams in NASCAR working something out, because of course we've heard more than enough frustrations on both sides. Denny Hamlin in particular has been very vocal about his frustrations with the sport on his podcast and so forth. And then, to cap this off, that brutal loss in the championship this year, which, again, still something left to be resolved here as well. To see them work something out. Yeah, that is something worth being happy about. I would caution against saying, like, oh, this is going to be the new golden era and all that. Like, it would be great if it was. That possibility is always there. It is. But we don't know that for sure. And again, there could always be future lawsuits, not appeals, because in this case here it was settled. But there are other battles to be fought. And, that may well come up in the future because, nothing was entirely settled here, and that was a challenge. And it really wasn't. We didn't get a verdict on this from, somebody independent. So we don't know what that case is. So I hope, again, and I know I get, again, this reputation of being overly negative here on this, but you got to be realistic. You really do. There's a lot of people and a lot of money that's invested in this sport, and not everything goes perfectly all the time, and we would certainly strive for it to be. We want it to be. We love the sport. I know I do. Going back, more than 25 years, go back to, 35 years really at this point, going back to the early 90s. And seeing that and seeing the potential that this sport has, and all that. And I think, there needs to be less certainty. There needs to be less certainty. I think there needs to be more unpredictability. I think things need to be shaken up. I think you need to have new leadership. I think you need to have new broadcasters. I think you need to have new teams. You need to have new drivers. You need to have new venues. Thankfully we're having new tracks and everything like that. There needs to be less certainty. And this was definitely not a step in that direction. This was a step towards just keeping the status quo there with the teams. And now are we going to have a situation where it's like the NFL, and then you got certain team owners that are really pulling the levers? Like you got, you have the commissioner, but then he's just there to, shake the hand of the MVP. Do they have any actual power here at this point? That's going to be really interesting to find out. Meanwhile, the team's just going to do their own thing anyway, and they're going to do this. What are they going to do with it? What are they going to do with this ability? Is it going to be, are they going to have more, are they going to be allowed to innovate the car? Are they going to bring any of that back? Or is it going to remain a spec car that they got to just deal with? And that's the same deal there. These are all things that just have not been resolved from this. And again, and maybe we'll hear more about this in the settlement. And again, I hoped to hear more about this coming into here, but, I'm not hearing it so far. And if it is out there, it doesn't seem like it's a top priority in all this. So we'll see. I feel like I'm going round and round on this, but I think that's another one to look at. But, it's a tricky situation. So I hope that stock car racing is not turning into Formula One. I think that should be resisted, significantly here. There's undoubtedly a lot of toes have been stepped on, in the ascendancy to this. And honestly, I think it was, where was it? Was it, MDK that did that video summing up some of the other issues that NASCAR has had over the years, kind of talk about the Jeremy Mayfield deal and Curtis Turner and, others from here. Yeah, I believe it was Jet MDK's video. Did a very good job on that one, by the way. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. But summing up kind of the, just this overall direction of the sport and what issues there have been, over these years that, that you've had, drivers blacklisted and so forth. And a lot of times in those cases, they were people from small teams. Jeremy Mayfield was driving for a small team, in 2009. Carl Long, for sure, with what happened in the All-Star race that year. It always seems to come up that same way. And then other organizations over the years. Again, I talked about the JD McDuffie deal and people getting, critical of him driving an old hauler there. So I'm hopeful that we're heading to something good. I'm hopeful that some aspects of the sport are improved. If that is accomplished by this, then this will have been worth it. I'm just not sure yet. I'm trying to be cautious in my optimism here. I don't think this is a bad thing necessarily, but I don't think, all the problems are over. I think that maybe some things are just starting here. So we'll see. So I'm going to continue this chat here in a little bit. I'm going to do some trivia a little bit. I got some other things I'd like to talk about. We'll probably talk a bit more about the lawsuit itself here on the other side of this break. But I do have Badger at the door here, so I'm going to get him and bring him on here, and then we'll continue the show. So stay tuned, folks. I'll be back in just a moment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, back here again. So, yeah, so again, just a couple other thoughts here on the lawsuit and the charter deal here too. Just this past week, Lionel revealed which diecast were the top sellers this year, and then like right at the top or near the top, I believe it was Justin Allgaier's car from the Daytona 500 that JR Motorsports entered. An open car. How about that? Perfect timing. It's there are some who say that, the era of the ordinary man doing extraordinary things in NASCAR has ended. But if that's ended, what is it replaced with? What's replacing it? Are all these drivers superstars? Are they all internationally famous? Are they all in every advertisement you see out there? No, they're not. We're just kind of starting to kind of see drivers in ads again. We're just starting to see some halfway decent, product crossovers here. Teams like RFK Racing have worked exceedingly well with that. Other teams like Hendrick Motorsports, absolutely, I don't know what they're thinking with their paint schemes. That butt ugly HP paint scheme for Byron. What the hell are they thinking? This is the team that Sam Bass designed, the Jeff Gordon paint scheme with the rocket red and all that, and all the colors of the rainbow. And now we got this. What are they thinking? You got a company that got a big name company like that, and you got all these awful paint schemes out there. There is a lot that needs to be reconciled here. And you know what? If the teams get the teams are getting these full-time charters, and they get this security in a very unpredictable business, which again, I don't think was the ultimate goal here. I don't think it should have been necessarily, but okay, they have it now. Well, there's a responsibility there. They better be working on some solutions to a lot of these problems, the big ones and the small ones. They better have some say in it. And I think the next battle is going to be what the TV partners' role is in all this, where, because again, certainly that's the money they're fighting over, but also like, okay, who's telling the truth here? Like who's saying like, who's determining the schedule? We heard in among the testimony here that Amazon wasn't going to pick up their portion of this past year without the Chicago Street Course in Mexico City. Well, it sounds like the discussion earlier that these broadcast partners don't have a say in NASCAR setting their schedules is not true. So, okay, let's kick over that beehive and figure out what's going on there. Maybe that's where things kind of figure out there. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. I think most people can agree on that. At least I hope so. I hope people don't have the mistaken belief that they see this case and this turn out this way and just believe this is the happily ever after. I would caution against that very much so. Very, very much so. Because these guys still got to work together. They still got to work together. I mean, what does this mean for Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell? What does this mean for Jim France? What does this mean for NASCAR itself? And then, what does this mean for the RTA and the teams and their sponsorship agreements? We're not really going to know. We don't really know. How much has this really changed? It seemed like the argument from the beginning here was this system was flawed, and now we want to make it permanent. Like how does permanence make it better? It's like, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with it very much so. Because again, like, as I said, and I've already, spent too much time on this here from before, but I'm still grappling with it. I felt like I was grappling with it on our last show, and I feel very much the same, even on the other side of this. I don't feel that much more locked in from it. I do think a lot was revealed that it was very interesting to see it revealed. And again, I'm big kudos again. They deserve another call to the people that were covering this and taking, handwritten notes there and working together on that. I think it's tremendous. I'm glad in the social media era, it did make it easier for this to follow, even if it was like pieces during recesses there during it. So, we'll see where all this shakes out. But yeah, it'll be something to look at. So let's see here. Let me just see. I mean, if we're talking, again, the financial stability of these teams and again, there should be some freedom that's allowed here for this. If the teams are free to do it, what are they going to do with it? Whenever some side gets more power than they had before, the real question is, are they going to just keep doing what they've been doing, or are they going to do something different? If there's a changing presence of sponsorship, that's the part I've been chewing on just on the show tonight here. If something changes there, is there going to be an easing perhaps of letting these drivers express themselves and letting them have a personality? Are the teams going to be able to just take care of that? All the little ticky tacky things that nobody likes. Are the teams going to be able to fix that? Or are they going to have a role to do that? Or are they going to have a say in maybe, in any discussion on it? Or do they even have a willingness to engage in a debate on it? That's going to be interesting. I would hope that this isn't just all this was done and they get permanent charters and then they just, they sit in their corner and eat their cookie and that's it. Like, okay, no, I mean, something else is going to happen, right? Like, we're going to do some more things, right? We're going to make some changes, right? Like, I think, whatever your viewpoint is, I think most people are anxious for that change, whether it's something inspired from the past or something even more bold for the future. I would share that enthusiasm for sure. And again, this may just well be the first step towards it. I don't think this is 100% going to get us there. But we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. So yeah. So I mean, kind of getting wrapped around the axle on that. Let me look at my other notes here and see what else I had on this. I picked up new headphones here since our last show. My other ones were digging into my right ear and had a hinge break on them, but I picked up these and I sound way better on this. So hopefully I hope that translates to a better sound on the recording here. Let's see. Let's see, not there. Okay. Yep, about the open. Yeah, kind of other notes I had on that, kind of similar to the discussion about the qualifying races for the Daytona 500. And, again, I mean, the very real possibility of just 36 car fields with charters being the norm. I know there were contingencies in the previous agreement that they could expand the number of charters, up to 40, or I guess it was 39. So they'd still have the 4 open cars to get 43 car fields again. I don't know what happens to that. Again, this is stuff that's all still being negotiated now, because again, something that, talking about this with the family and they kind of brought up here at the same time, all the other teams from before signed the previous agreement and these two teams didn't. Now there's a new agreement there and they got to present this, I guess, to the other teams that already signed the old one. And I guess the old one's not good anymore. And this one, is this the new one to take it or leave it? Or can they work under the old agreement? I don't know why they'd want to, but I don't know. I don't think it automatically means they suddenly get the, this benefits of this new agreement automatically. I guess they got to, enter into it. But given the fact that this was what they were, competing for, maybe that's not as big of a obstacle as it seems, perhaps, but we'll find out. But in terms of again, having large fields, having as many competitors in there as possible, I mean, what does this mean for things like the All-Star Open? I think the All-Star race itself is, I'm kind of joining the camp of that event just being pretty warmed over and kind of pointless at this point. I hate it for fans that go out to Dover, that they had to lose their points-paying cup race to have that again. Kind of the same attitude kind of given as we've heard in the lawsuit here. Oh, well, you have Xfinity and trucks. No, they want a cup date. They want a cup race, not just a exhibition race up there. And who knows what that's going to look like, as a cup race. The All-Star race at Bristol wasn't very good. So I'm not holding my breath on that one, but we'll find out. But again, the comparisons to Formula One after Andrea Moda in the early 90s are striking to me. And seeing where Formula One is now could well be a view into the future of where, NASCAR becomes. And you got all these larger than life team owners and ooh, yeah, wow, it's amazing. And, they're the movers and shakers out there. And, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but, we'll see. Because it's interesting hearing from Formula One fans about what they're satisfied with and what they don't like about the cars. Those things look just like limousines. They're driving them around Monaco and they're too long and they're too wide and they can't pass. And then you got such a large disparity between the best teams and the struggling ones. And then you don't have very big fields at all. I don't know. I've tried many times with Formula One and there's good storylines there too. The whole deal with Nico Hülkenberg getting his first podium there was a great story there too. But stuff like that, it seems like it's so rare these days. And I would shudder to think of a future for NASCAR that's anything like that there. So, we'll see. At least they got a full season championship though. I'll give them that. I'll give them that 10 times out of 10. So, there's that at the same time. But yeah, there's still a lot to be done. Still a lot of work that we need to head to. I was going to go day by day through the trial here, but I think that's kind of redundant at this point. I think there was, definitely some interesting fireworks. The last show we did here was the weekend before the trial started here. So this is the first time kind of going into to all that. yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. So yeah. Let me see from here. So we'll do some trivia here in a little bit. I'll kind of branch out into kind of some other topics here at the same time. If I get any other thoughts on this or anything else, I'm sure I've missed some major points of contention here from the lawsuit. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to mention it here in the chat, and I'll jump into that there as well. We lost a couple of key figures in the sport here these last couple of weeks here as well. Rather shocking news, the passing of Michael Annett, a driver who I've written about. I think he was a feature about 7 articles on the Last Car page there as well. Just shocking. I mean, gosh, he's about the same age as Lastbro. So, very, very young in that. So condolences to his friends and family. A competitor that, again, very much was, again, one of these, these smaller team guys, at least in the Cup Series, when, H. Scott Motorsports was up there and, they were trying to compete, and Justin Allgaier was his teammate getting into the Cup Series. But, man, it was a difficult road there. Some challenging days there as well. Had that one Bristol race where the car broke down on the first lap. But really found himself in the Xfinity Series. I mean, he was great in ARCA, winning those super speedway races in ARCA, and then later in his career with JR Motorsports and, bringing that Pilot Flying J sponsor in there. I think one of the most profound things that was posted this past week about Annett was the picture shared by Sammy Smith showing him with Annett next to the car back when Smith was very young and wearing Annett's merch and stuff like that, and knowing that, not knowing years later that he would be the one carrying that branding in the sport now that's still with JR Motorsports in the number 8 team. Just sad. Just, we still don't know the details on that, at least not from what I've heard. But an unfortunate loss there as well. And then Nick Joanitas in the ARCA West Series passing away as well. This was the driver that you may recall the video I posted from Sears Point this past July, where the car had broken down before the race started, and the team was thrashing at it to get it back out there, and ultimately did get back on the track. Again, another driver that competed for smaller teams there in the sport, and the news, there as well. And then, of course, the transporter driver, Rick Otis Hodges, there as well. I never got to meet the man myself, but I know a lot of people whose life he touched very much as well, working in the garage area. Again, one of the many, unsung heroes out there, the transporter drivers, people working on the crew and working those long hours there to, get these teams from one spot to the other. It's a shame to hear about this in such a short order here from these last couple of weeks here as well. Another thing that was a bit eye-opening here this last week, and again, this was kind of buried in some of the other news stories here, was that involving Chase Johnson, the sprint car driver who was critically injured in an accident during a sprint car race in August of last year. This was the same driver, you may recall, and again, I hate that we had some bot here in the chat that was screwing things up here at the same time that we were talking about this, but there was that very serious incident that occurred at Sears Point this past July where a security guard pushed him over in his wheelchair as his family was trying to leave the track there. This happening right in front of me there. I haven't heard anything directly myself, but there was a news report posted just a couple weeks ago that security guard has now been told to stand trial, ordered to appear in this, and the family moving forward with charges on that is certainly understood. It was an appalling moment there, and hopefully things are getting reconciled there at the same time. Almost at the exact same time that this news came out, Chase posted a very intense video. I retweeted it just last week there. Again, viewer discretion advised if you haven't seen it there, of the accident that he suffered his injury and the nature of it. Again, it just points to just the safety advancements and the work that's still to be done in all forms of racing, and this and being in sprint car racing there as well. And a lot of interesting discussion that's been brought up from there too. Certainly in sprint car racing, they've lost a number of their stars the last few years, and very nearly lost Chase here as well. from his injury, and he's still recovering from that. So certainly extending my best wishes to him and to his family this holiday season. I know they've been doing some other appearances and work there at the same time, but his recovery still a continuing effort. But an interesting video on that too, to kind of point to other aspects of racing safety measures that are still kind of being worked on there at the same time. But yeah, so we kind of had that at the same deal there too. Other than that, let's see. I don't have. I could go into. Oh yeah, we had a couple other things here as well. Big thanks to those of you for the checking out the website and the channel here. Of course, more videos that are in the works here. I was planning on recording a script for my next video last week. Didn't quite get to it. We've had everything happening on this end here. But looking to kind of get caught up on that as well. I have another sponsor video that I'm ready to kind of record and get ready there. A feature on a sponsor rather in the sport. Next 500 days still in the works there. I have to finish. There's one more round of revisions I need to add to the end there. I found some other material that want to bolt onto that before that one's really ready to record. And they've been doing some other research on another project here too. So I've been plenty busy here, just trying to kind of dodging the raindrops here, trying to get through that. But I think we're getting going there too. Also, with the Formula One season wrapped up, I will be having updates to the NASCAR, the LASCAR history books on Amazon. The Cup Series, Xfinity, and Trucks have been completed. I need to finish the Formula One update there as well. And for those of you who have checked out those ebooks online, the update for those will be available here pretty soon. So I'll be working on getting those up there too. Big thanks to those of you who also checked out the LASCAR store. We sold a couple hats here this week. We're going to have some more on hand here very soon in this style here in the store. So stay tuned for that. And also the exciting new sticker for Rise of the Field fillers that Bruno Raphael designed. Big thanks to him. He did a wonderful job on that. I knew he was going to have a lot of fun with that prompt when we were talking about it there, because I had something in my mind there about just having. I was originally thinking about making like stickers for like each one of the different teams, but I didn't want to have like I don't know, it was going to get too expensive to just have multiple different ones there. But I figured just something like one kind of graphic where you could immediately recognize each of the cars in the graphic there, including the Stanton Barrett, the number 94 car there as well. And haven't forgotten about him too. Hopefully something comes up there with next year and his involvement in the Derek Cope or Cope family racing effort next year. That will present an opportunity to hopefully make some more progress on that, which has now been kind of going these last few years. But I thought Bruno did a wonderful job there with the sticker. So kudos to him there on that. And if you haven't picked up a sticker yet, you can still check that out, this lascar.info store. If you go to lascar.info and click the store link at the top, there's more details on that. We have some other stuff there as well. So if you're looking for something for the holidays, that'll be a place to check all that out there at the same time. I do have something for show and tell on that same note. Actually, I got kind of a funny story here too to kind of go with it. I will be doing some trivia here in a little bit. But I was running some errands this afternoon, and I went by this store, and they actually had a die cast of a 24th scale Cartoon Network car that Steve Grissom ran back in 1996. Of course, the subject of the video earlier this year. And I picked up one myself over at booth 34, and we had to travel back east, but I saw this one and overheard this young lady that was coming by there, and she was looking for a gift for her kids. She's like, where are the race cars at? Because this was like an antique store, and it had kind of just, hodgepodge of stuff. And they're kind of looking, and I was showing her that. It's like, well, I think your kid probably get a kick out of this one. And I was kind of telling her a bit about the video and the history, and she's like, oh, this is perfect. So I handed her a card there with the car there, and I'm sure the shopkeep appreciated the sale there as well. But I was happy to see that too, because I know that kids get to get a kick out of that too. And hopefully he checks out the video, because I think the story was very fascinating. That ended up being a very, very big project this year. It took a lot of time, but it was well worth it. I loved doing the interviews with Brent Martin and the design team. The drivers, of course, talking with Jerry again was great this year. It was a lot of fun there, and I really appreciate everybody's continued support of that video too. So that was cool to see. It just happened to be, just right there on that too. So that it's good to see that people are still getting a kick out of that at the same time. Where is it here too? We'll probably go ahead. I'll bring the trivia one out here, and we'll do some categories, and I'll do show and tell at the same time. Let's see. We'll bring out the late 90s deal here, and we'll get some trivia questions for you. So, hang on. We did that already. All righty. So, once again, the categories here are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are, once again, your categories. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So those are our categories. We'll do a couple of questions here to wrap up. Those of you, if you're tuning out here after this, I may be doing another show. I'd like to do another show before Christmas. That's what I'm thinking of doing. I might do a race watch along. We'll see about that. We're going to figure some stuff out here too. Also, for those of you in the NASCAR.info Patreon, this is your last day to vote for the next video that's going to be premiering for the $10 members of the Patreon that will eventually get posted onto the main channel as well. We're down to the last day for that. I'm going to close the polls tonight. So if you haven't voted on that yet, we got about 23, 25 votes on there. Definitely make sure you vote on that. And then a new poll will be up in the Patreon tomorrow on another subject for you guys. So if you're interested in that, again, patreon.com/LASCAR on Brock. As you guys make your picks for your vote here, another thing that I picked up this week that I wanted to show on here. Let's see if I can get it. I'm going to try to get it shown on camera well. I got my setups a little awkward. I got Badger down here, and he is all dozed out. Oh, you awake here, buddy? Let's see. Let's see if Badger wants to say hi right quick. You good, man? You good? How you doing? Oh, there he is. There he is. You good, man? Oh, he's pretty tired. He's pretty tired. Oh, goodness. All right, here. There we go. I'll put you back down there. There you go, man. All right. So, let's see. Earlier this week, somebody on Twitter posted this really interesting post from the Goodwill site of some diecasts that were very unique, and I couldn't help it. I had to pick these up. These were so bizarre. I love any kind of thing where it's like, again, I always loved the old Racing Champions diecast where there was some kind of little bit of flexibility in the design. Like, it wouldn't always look exactly the way it was. Or, again, if it's something, eccentric, right, where you have like a diecast or maybe there's a copyright issue, so they don't quite make it look like the way it was. So this turned up this week, and I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if anybody else was interested in it. I did bid on it there, but I was floored when I actually won it here. Were these two cars right here, where their paint schemes from looks like 97, 98, and they altered them into these like approximations of the paint schemes. I love stuff like this. And I've never seen this brand before, this Real Toy brand here. I'm not sure if it was like a dollar store equivalent. I know they used to make, Diet Pepsi had a licensing thing where they made like these 43rd scale Pontiac diecasts, and it was the exact same chassis that Racing Champions used for their Pontiacs in the early 90s. And I think they sold these in the late 90s. And I remember they made for great customs because it was like completely white. And you could use like some whiteout or some basic paint or something to kind of scrub out the logos without like, people today that do like, custom diecasts, they do way more advanced things than that. But these are really interesting. Check this out. So you got this one here, the approximation of the Tabasco Fiasco paint scheme. Not sure if it shows up really well. I'll probably take some pictures here as well. But showing on a Ford Thunderbird, no less. And of course, the number 85 on it here. Really interesting just on this here to kind of get this. It's got like Ford Taurus headlights on like a Thunderbird nose. Take a look at this. We'll get some. I haven't decided if I'm going to take these out of the box or not. The box is kind of quirky too, because it shows these other designs they have with, I guess, not quite Dale Jarrett and not quite Mark Martin as well. I think these are probably the two best ones of these four, although these aren't bad. But yeah, it's got like it just shows like motorsport world champion. It's got a signature that I think on both drivers, on both of these cars, it shows the same signature, but it's kind of hard to read. But I'll take some more pictures of these here. I almost thought of just making a standalone video on these, but I think some people already saw these on Twitter. But maybe they'll become a subject of something down the line here too. But yeah, check that out. You got here's the rear view here as well. You kind of see just kind of some generic logos. It just says Grand Prix Motorsport Best Products there in place of the Tabasco logo on the hood. So yeah, look at that. You got kind of that deal. And on the scale too, basically like a 1/43rd scale, looks like maybe thereabouts, maybe a little bit larger. It's kind of like that there. And yeah, this one too, this is interesting. This Chad, clearly you got the Chad Little paint scheme, which is on a Thunderbird, which is cool because of course in 98, Chad Little actually did run a Thunderbird on the number 97 car. This one here, the numbers switched around in a different font to the 79. And this Gasso brand or whatever on the hood of the car here. Again, I love obscure things like this. Cause of course, when you have like start and park teams, when you have teams that were literally start and parks, a small organization enters an extra car, they scramble the numbers around. You think about the 79, that was Jimmy Means's team had a second car there a lot of years. It reminds me so much of that. So like, these are like, like other cars, they're just like obscure. You could have like your own story for them. What's interesting on this is it doesn't have green wheels. It looks like these are red. Like I'm colorblind, so maybe I'm not seeing it right. But again, I'll take some pictures of these here and share those on there. But yeah, look at that. Yeah, you can see that pretty good there. But yeah, I love these are actually pretty good quality. I mean, I'm picturing these would be something you'd find like in a dollar store or maybe in a market overseas or something. And I guess it just had some overstock of these paint schemes and just kind of, went with something pretty different, but they're really nice. They're not bad quality. Like these graphics look like they're actually printed on there. Like they're not stickers or anything. So again, I'm sure licensed around, 97, 98, with these Thunderbirds. It looks like all four of these are Thunderbirds on the back now that I'm looking at it again. Okay. Yeah, okay, it is red. So yeah, there you go. And yeah, the box art based on Jeff Gordon's scheme. Yep, you can see that too. It's like, is that Ray Evernham right there in the blue hat? Kind of looks like him a little bit. But yeah, no, this came up and I was like, okay, I wasn't sure if anybody else was bidding on it. I expected this to just get blown out or something, but I was surprised I won it because I was like, oh wow, okay. I didn't really put that many bids on it there, but I think that's fascinating. I think that's really interesting. And even if these are really common, like I'm not really worried about that. Something that just looks cool or something that's kind of interesting in that way. But yeah, I'll take some pictures there and show those in a bit there. But yeah, I kind of wanted to show that. They just came in earlier today, and I thought that was really neat. So kind of an interesting look there. Talk about lawsuits. I imagine that there's a lawsuit there for the likenesses of Chad Little and Todd Bodine's cars there with this too. But yeah, no, definitely bootlegs, but yeah, pretty good quality. So again, I don't know if it's, yeah, something like that too. The window net is red. Oh, I didn't notice that. Is it? Oh, I think they're red on both of them. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like a gray interior, but a red window net. Because yeah, it's got kind of that, there you go. You got kind of the dove gray on the inside. And then yeah, you got the red window net. Yeah, see again, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? There's more to unpack on these. Yeah, maybe I might get the light box out or something and kind of maybe do something with that. I got so many video ideas and things jumping around here, but this might be something worth it there too. Yeah, I can't quite make out the signature on the roof. What else does it say there? Looks like, yeah, it's like Jensen Little or Jameson Little or Jameson Littner. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of got a J. It looks like James or Jameson, and then like a capital L, and then like, yeah, it's gonna be hard to tell. I'll post yeah, it definitely deserves some pictures there. They took some pretty good ones on the page there already. This one has, yeah, well, and also, yeah, again, you have the 97 era Thunderbird headlights on this one. Whoop, there we go. Or actually it was kind of like Monte Carlo headlights, are they? No, I think those are like Thunderbird headlights. Yeah. I don't think those are Monte Carlo ones. They're pretty close. The glare's not good. There we go. But yeah, I like the Thunderbird Taurus. That's quite well. Is that a Taurus nose? No, that's a Thunderbird nose. That's definitely a Thunderbird nose. Oop, there we go. There we go. You can see that a little better. Try to bring that into focus. So, yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah. No, I'll get some pictures of those there and share that as well. All right. Okay. Let's see. Where are we on? Okay, we got this. That's already taken care of. Again, big thanks to those of you. Also, have been still making some more custom Nascourt certificates, as I mentioned on last time's show there as well. We've had some more orders here this week, so big thanks to those of you who have checked that out. And again, it doesn't have to be a real driver. It could be of your friend's name. It could be your username. It could be any paint scheme you want. There's a lot of customization options on that as well. And if there's any questions or anything, if you want any other aspects of it different, you can certainly let me know on that too. I kind of keep the template more or less the same. But yeah, we'll do that there too. Michael, yeah, I'm not sure if Ryan is a relation of JD. I'm not sure about that, but that's cool that you had somebody that picked up one. Right on. Alrighty. Which category was the leader on this? I think I got a super chat I got to catch up on too. Yeah. Craig, thank you for subscribing. I see your notice on there. And Michael, I think I have your super chat to catch up on there. Michael Jensen for $5. Thank you very much. Michael Jensen, 1817. Just joined. I'm happy they kept the "if you suck, we can make you sell" clause in because meaning the teams don't want Rick Ware in. LOL. Rick Ware is the closest thing to a full-time underdog, says Death Killer Spiral in response there. Yeah, I mean, again, it's I don't see what the threat is for having smaller teams or teams that are struggling out there. I mean, it's always strange to me that there has to be some kind of an incentive in there to have the teams perform better, to want to do better, to improve their programs. These teams that are the back of the field now, I think they have less in common with even the Starting Park teams from 10 years ago than ever, really. Maybe they're consistently towards the back of the field or something like that. But somebody's always going to be towards the back. I mean, do you really want to have like a continuing process of just pushing people out and then putting somebody else in? I don't see how that's better than just having a team where maybe they struggle too much, so they can't afford to keep going, and then they just sell to somebody else. Like, I think that's a very different situation. I think if you just kind of let that naturally happen, like I've always felt the same. And because we've seen this with big name drivers too. Danica Patrick is a perfect example. If you're struggling enough, if you're not competitive enough, the sports, you're not going to be in the sport very long anyway. It may seem like Danica Patrick was in the sport for a very long time, but really she wasn't. And even with a big name ride and a big name sponsor, it was only a few years, and there didn't need to be a charter system to work her out. But I see where you're coming from, Michael, on your viewpoint there. I mean, again, I get that you want these teams to perform as best they can. You don't want to have a team that's just there for a long time. That doesn't seem like they're investing anything in their teams. But I would still come to the defense of Rick Ware Racing as well. That they have improved, that they have got. I mean, Cody Ware was very good at the August Daytona race this year. And I think really has performed well. The Haas Factory team, I've always been very big on them on this show. Somebody was posting something, I think on Reddit earlier today, saying like which team was outstanding in Xfinity or which driver was outstanding in the lower series that just really stunk in the Cup Series, and put a big picture of Cole Custer's win at Kentucky. It's like, okay, yeah, he won just that race, but keep in mind, folks, he almost won both Daytona races this year. He was like right there at the very end of both those races. It just didn't quite work out, so, we'll see. I think there still should be a place for, teams, if they're following all the orders, if they're following, it takes so much to, start these organizations and get the cars to the track and pass inspection and be fast enough in practice and so forth, and not blow up in the first stage of the race or anything, it's still something there. So, and I know that the clause is there to talk about, consistent struggles, like if they're at the back of the field a certain number of years, but it seems like NASCAR themselves have been kind of reluctant to enforce that. And Rick Ware's is a perfect example of that. They could have enforced that just a couple of years ago and then didn't. Why that same courtesy wasn't extended to Starcom racing, I'm not sure. But again, it's one of those things. But again, I can see an argument on both sides, but I always like having the smaller teams out there. It's not just to have somebody to talk about, because you can have, a small field of, teams, and you're still going to have one or two guys that are just going to miss it. And they may even be one of the best teams or drivers out there, but they're going to be your last place finishers out there. I mean, and then sometimes you're going to have a guy that just has a really awful weekend, like AJ Allmendinger had at Phoenix, where, you crash in practice, you go to a backup, they miss qualifying, you have to start last, and then you wreck in the exact same spot, and you're just over it. And I wasn't even going to try to interview him that weekend because, it's like that story was pretty clearly written on the outside wall there. Uh-oh, do we have something else in here too? I don't know if I need to deputize anybody else to take care of any bots in here too, but are we doing okay in the chat? Not a lot of votes tonight. Wild card 2, teams 1. Okay, thanks, Beast of Metal. We'll probably just do some wild card questions here, and we'll wrap up the show for tonight. So thank you for tuning in here. We'll just do a couple questions to wrap things up there. But again, thank you for your super chat there, Michael. All right. First question for tonight, folks. What Keokuk, Iowa driver, so Keokuk spelled Keokuk, what driver from that city once toiled as a bean farmer? What Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? Excuse me. Thank you, Beast of Metal. Thank you, Ben, for the update. Yeah, Badger still crashed out. He was honking here just a moment ago. I don't think it picked up on the microphone here, but yeah. I need to get a way to get the camera to adjust on its own. I just have it on a tripod right here. Over time, we'll figure out ways to add more flourishes to all this here at the same time. Let's see here. What Keokuk, Iowa driver, I feel like I'm mispronouncing that terribly. Is it Keokuk? Keokuk. Anybody from Iowa in here? Maybe somebody else in here would know. There's probably somebody in here from that region that's ripping their hair out like, Brock, it's wrong. Come on, dude. Uh-oh. There we go. I guess is for proper pronunciation. Is that proper, Agent Washington? Keokuk? I think that's what I said. I think it said Keokuk first. Now I'm saying Keokuk. Yeah, let me know. Anyway, that's the question there. What Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? Oh, that was the other thing. Yeah, thank you guys for checking out the store back when we did the sale there last week. I've been meaning to do a sale there for a while, especially with getting some new stuff in there too. So I appreciate people checking that out there as well. So we got some more stickers and certificates to send out, and those will be coming out there very soon as well. But right now, yeah, just looking at getting some more videos cranked out. So we'll get going there. Okay, good. No, I did get it. All right, right on. Thank you, Agent Washington. Got answers possibly. I'm sorry, my mic arm is right in front of the chat screen. Okay, let's turn it this way. There we go. It's a little better. All right, we got guesses for Frank Mundy and Soapy Castles. Yeah. It's okay. Small group tonight. I apologize. I saw that we had a couple other people. When I was starting this stream up, I saw a couple other people were starting their streams too. It's like, oh, okay. A little competitive here. But we got a Christmas fair tomorrow night, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to miss that here. So that's why we decided to do this today. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. What Keokuk, Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? The answer is Ramo Stott. Ramo Stott. I don't think anybody got that. Ramo Stott is the answer. I appreciate it. If anybody else is interested in being a mod or anything like that, let me know. Looking for somebody, if you're kind of more of a regular viewer on here, really, I just want to make sure that, people are able to post their comments here in the chat. Just mostly common sense. I don't really give too much direction to anybody here in the chat, but I just want to make sure it's not so choked up here that nobody can use it or, stuff like that. If people, I'm not against people arguing or anything like that. And certainly people are going to, I especially for the stuff I talk about on here, I expect people that are probably going to, not agree with everything I'm saying here too. So totally get it. Yeah, Ramos Stott. I believe he was the guy that inherited the pole, the Daytona 500, when a couple of other guys got disqualified. Wasn't it 76? I want to say. I'm going to have to look that up. Let's see. Let's see. 35 races. Yeah, 76 Daytona 500. Yeah, there we go. He farmed corn and beans during his racing career. So it wasn't just a bean farmer, it was a corn farmer. So there you go. Kind of a Ross Chastain type. Alrighty. Next one in the wild card category here. Let's see. Who once said, quote, "You ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out"? Now this, of course, in a different time, and I would assume in probably the 80s or 90s back there. Who once said, quote, "You ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out," is the quote. Of course, meant in jest. Of course, don't think anybody who said that in a different time period. Oh, you're very welcome. Is it Jabo Bluch Jr.? Thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate you enjoying the content. Yeah, I mean, how does the idea to modify races and cars go down? Good question. I mean, I do not know. I wish I knew, but I think we're all going to have to discover this together. It could well be that we get to February and we're talking about the clash at not the Coliseum, at the Bowman Gray in Daytona, and nothing feels any different. Maybe everything's going to feel exactly the same. Maybe it's not going to change anything. And, or maybe it's going to feel very different. Maybe maybe things are going to just, maybe the aura, maybe the vibe is going to be different. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I wasn't originally planning on doing a race in the spring. I may reconsider that, maybe like Vegas or Phoenix, just to kind of test the waters a bit and see how things are different from Phoenix in November, because it was very, as you recall from that race, of course, the way the championship wrapped up, I mean, yeah, it was a bizarre atmosphere, certainly, after everything shook out there. Who once said, quote, "You ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out"? That is a question. You got the Grinch meal. Yeah, that was out of stock over here. I was seeing that there too. Who once said you ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out? And the answer is DW. A couple of you got that one. Stuart Ross, looks like you got that one. I think a couple of you got that. Hang on, let me go up earlier here. J. Bob Bluch Jr., you've got it. Yep, you did too. Let's see. Yeah, DW Stuart Ross. There you go. Yeah, definitely sounds like something all three of them would say. I'm with you, Charles Peterson. Yeah, it sounds like it could be Rusty or Jeff Bodine. But yeah, DW on that one. So there you go. We'll do a couple more here on this evening. Here we go. This is kind of a little commercial question here. What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? Yeah, Austin Foster, you picked Michael Waltrip. That's not a bad guess either. yeah, very excited to get some more content rolling here. Yeah, I've got a fun idea for this next one that's coming out here, so it'll be good. And then the Talladega one, yeah, I'm just gonna be anxious to just get that one out because it's turned into quite the script, but I think it'll be fun to narrate. So we'll see how much work I get done on that this weekend. I got a couple other things I got in the works here to juggle around, but we'll get things figured out. What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? That is our question. Yeah, the ride-along program. I think it was Charles Peterson. I was almost going to say the Team Chevrolet ones, like the ones they did with Earnhardt and Jr. Like, those were fun. Around the same time. All right, we got guesses for John Andretti, Jeff Burton, Dale Jarrett, Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin. Several good guesses. Several good candidates. Let's see. The answer is Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon. Good guess. Michael Jensen, you got it. There you go. Yeah, I'm very happy with these headphones. It's a little sore on the left ear. Still got to adjust them a little bit. But yeah, they're a little more low profile. Those last ones, those red ones I had, they just, yeah, the hinge wasn't very good. I hope I can keep these in the rotation pretty well. Got a different plug in here. And again, big thanks to those of you in the Patreon making it possible so I can afford to upgrade some things here and keep things going. We're full speed ahead getting ready for next season. So, all right. Okay, here's a fun one. We might do, okay, maybe we'll wrap up with this one here. This will be a good one. Who is the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup scene? It's actually in here in the thing. I know some folks here some folks on a certain podcast that would get a kick out of this. Who is the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup scene? Some of those questions didn't make air, I bet. Yeah, I think Steelworks. I think you're right. Do. Who's the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup scene? Yeah, see, it's a challenging one. So again, this is a late 90s deal here. So we're not entirely sure who it could be. Could be a number of different personalities. Seeing them already showing up on here. We got David Moore. We got Dick Berggren, Steve Wade, Winston Kelly, Steve Post, Nigel Kinraid. All right, here we go. Let's see. Who's the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup scene? The answer is Steve Wade. Look at that. There it is. See, there you go. In case they're watching tonight. There you go. Steve's right there on the old quiz box. Steve Wade is the correct answer. All right. Okay, actually, I'm sorry. One more. I was just fumbling through this here, and I got another one. I think we might have had this one before, but we'll wrap up with this one. So last question of the night, folks. One more here. Who drove under the name Bob Sunderman to hide his racing career from his folks? Who drove under the name Bob Sunderman to hide his racing career from his folks? By the way, in the last one, yeah, a few of you got that one there. The official Caddis, you got it. Steve Wade. Charles Peterson, yes, you got it as well. And so did Stuart Ross 282. There you go. All right. Who drove under the name Bob Sunderman? Sunderman, to hide his racing career from his folks, from his parents. Who raced as Bob Sunderman? AJ Foyt, Bobby Allison, Robert Presley. Let's see. All right. Wow, we actually got a few more people joining in. Thank you, folks, for tuning in here. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Hope my ramblings made some sense. As usual, it feels like the last few of these shows here, I'm just kind of making sense of these stories as they're coming across, and rather than having anything firmly in hand, there, but sometimes that's the way these stories go. Again, in the legal biz and these lawsuits, they don't always have the clearest answers. So I think I think everybody's kind of figuring that out too. So we'll see. Bob Wellborn, Robert Presley. Okay, here we go. Answer coming up. Who drove under the name Bob Sunderman to hide his racing career from his folks? The answer is indeed Bobby Allison. A few of you got that. Beast of Metal, Andrew Haywood, you both got it. And it looks like that was it there as well. So that will do it for the show tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in here. I hope you've had a wonderful holiday season here. I'm planning on doing another show here. Might be a race watch along. We'll see. I've got to figure something out here sometime between now and the 25th. So we'll work something out. So stay tuned to my Twitter feed at LastCarOnBrock for more updates on that. Also, there's my Patreon at patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Of course, the website is lastcar.info. Stay tuned for more videos on this channel coming up very soon, including, again, 500 days, next sponsor promo. I think I talked about it before about the Slender U Figure Salon sponsorship. Yeah, some other content that I'm very excited to be working on here as well. So hope you're having a wonderful off season, and I will see you all next time. Stay tuned for the next show.